Hello, welcome again to another Omnibus review breakdown discussion show. I've been diving into so many more Omnis lately. My collecting habits and my collection have been shifting toward collected editions, hardcovers, and of course, Omnibus. And I wanted to take a little time to look at some of those books, to look at some of those stories. And as I'm finally getting around to reading some of the ones on my shelves, to take a little time with some friends to hear thoughts from everybody. The germ of this all sort of came about when I was hunting for that new X-Men omnibus that was out of print, and then it finally, popped on the market that they're going to be selling it again. And I made sure I went out of my way to like highlight how pumped I was for this thing. And 4 or 5 people were like, "Oh, I want to read mine again." And it just sort of pushed my thought process to a place of let's make a little book club. And I started a little crew on Instagram, and you can hit me up if you want to be thrown into the into the fire there. It was just a great way to talk to people about, in that case, that one omnibus. And since then, people have come, people have gone, and we've gone through Immortal Hulk. I've been reading Deadly Class. I'm going to start up Sandman again and get back into those Sandman omnis. And people are sharing what they're reading, and it's just a great opportunity to have some chats about those books. And I promised originally that each time I finished one of those omnibus, I would have a big chat to have everybody on board. And it's been slow coming around actually making those happen. So we got through the new X-Men one not too long ago, and now tonight is Immortal Hulk. And I got my man Stu from Dr. Doom's fan club joining me.
Hey, what's up, John? Thank you so much for having me, man.
Station, sir, how you doing, man?
Station, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I had the day off today. The wife is down bad with the flu, but yeah. Other than that, things in my house are pretty chill.
Nice, that's good.
How about you? How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. We had a big storm here that hit California, but I'm far enough south that I think we dodged the worst of it. It's just a lot of rain. That was mostly it. So we did all right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously, this omnibus itself, because it is easily the largest omnibus that I've got in my collection. This is the wraparound cover for the final issue 50. It has all 50 of those issues. It includes the annuals that were in that era. It includes the one shots for like King in Black and Absolute Carnage. It includes also the Defenders miniseries that was part of the Immortal Hulk run. So there's like 2 issues for that. It includes the 5 issues of Gamma Flight, and it includes the Immortal Hulk Time of the Monsters, and then there's like an Immortal Hulk 0. So
it's got it all.
In the end, it accounts to about 60 comics, which by my estimation, especially considering some of them are massively, issue 25 and 50 are oversized. It feels and looks like the largest omnibus in my collection. And it's fitting, I suppose, for a character like the Hulk to have that honor. I will admit that just that alone makes it a hefty challenge for reading. And I did read all the issues here. I did not read them digitally this time around. I wanted to read them this way. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the weak. You gotta be Hulk strong to manage this bad boy.
For sure.
But I do recommend it. And I'm, right off the bat, it's not anything that this is not a hater show for me. This is definitely something I was very pleased with. But I wanted to ask you first, Stu, for you, how early did you find Immortal Hulk? I came late to the party. Were you there pretty early on? Did people have to convince you?
No, I was late to the party. So like part of my comics renaissance was really in the early stages of COVID and being locked down, and that's really when I got into rereading and finding out what I had kind of fell asleep on. So that was one I came to later, just collecting through the trades and stuff like that. But I was not, unfortunately, these gorgeous Alex Ross covers. I was not on up to date on that. Week to week or month to month, unfortunately.
And neither was I. I think I got on in the second storyline, like the second trade was probably about when I got into it. I'm not a natural Hulk reader. I've only read a few like Hulk related story arcs, whether it's Planet Hulk and those, I definitely have read that. And there's been a few like storylines here and there, but it's never been a big book for me.
No. And this was I've always been a Hulk reader after the fact. Like Planet Hulk, I heard that was great, or War Hulk, so I came back to those. But this was the type of book that when Philip Kennedy Johnson's Incredible Hulk launched, and it was rumored to be, have echoes or influences of this, that it made me buy a Hulk book every week. So this book, in some ways, made me a weekly Hulk reader.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. I forgot to say hello to the chat, and I'm definitely going to make up for that right now. I know Entropy from Comics, your comment vanished, but you were here before everybody else. So shout out to you, Kev. Then we got Mark from Legion of Comics. I know he is a massive Hulk fan, and I know he's read this entire series.
Oh, yeah.
We got Chris Lopez, or I Got Issues, my man, in the chat. He says, I read the first about 14 or 15 issues when they came out, but then I fell off super hard. I still picked up most of the issues as it continued, but never cracked a single one. Is it time? I mean, I would say yes. I was very excited for this omnibus to drop, and it dropped over summer. So for those of you that are wondering, is it still in print? Is it still out there? My LCS still has a copy on their shelf. So it's possible your local shop will be the same. And of course, you can check in-stock trades or organic books and those kind of places to see if they've got copies as well.
What a gorgeous volume too, dude. I gotta say that, like, wraparound cover.
It's a stunner. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And there's two, I want to say, dust jacket covers. So you can get, I went with the what issue is not, I can't remember what issue number that is. It was pretty late in the run, like issue 20, I think it was, something like that. Cover, but I think there's another variant that might be the like issue 1 cover, which is an homage. For those that don't know, I think it's an homage to issue 102 when Hulk became its own self-titled series.
That bad boy.
Yeah, that cover is an homage to an earlier Hulk issue, an Incredible Hulk issue. That one, the other one, he's just kind of coming out of the ground. This one, I think, adds the gravestone.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Making it a little bit
different. Thought that was number 1 for some reason.
Yeah. What's up, Agu, in the chat? What's up, my man?
Hello.
Tony, Old Wolf. I know it's late back
up?
east. I appreciate you making the time, my man. I know he's doing an unboxing when I'm done here, so I'll try to stay on time, brother. We got Terry, the Bronze Page Comics, man. What is going on, sir? He just dropped some great questions today about comic collecting. I appreciate that. Mark, the Cuddy Sark. What is going on, sir? Good to see you. You guess I'm talking about the Hulk? I mean, it's in the thumbnail, Tony. Look at the artwork. Is this omnibus slabbed? So I have a couple of slabs of this run. I went back retroactively after enjoying the second or third arc when I got into it, and I got the full Alex Ross run. I had more. I read through. So for me, I read through issue 25, and then I felt like that was a good ending point for me. And then I told myself, if they keep going, I'll buy an omnibus or something later on. When they got to issue 50, I realized, hey, if I just had choosing not to buy 26 through 50 is cheaper to buy the omnibus than buy those 20 issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw some back issues just yesterday in my LCS, and they were all at least like $20 a pop.
Right.
From the first half of that run. So yeah,
totally.
definitely not something.
So I was happy that I held off and got them all collected this way. And then since then, I've actually sold a handful. I've only got the first, I think, 13 or 15 issues in the end. So I have the first 2 issues slabbed here behind me. They're not super high grades. They were just whatever I could get from my LCS. These are the ones I read, the individual issues I read. And then I've got what I don't even know if you can call it that, but his first appearance as the Immortal Hulk here in Avengers 684. So I've gone back and kind of snagged some of those books and then pressed, cleaned, and slabbed those. As a reminder, Stu's links are all in the description below: YouTube, Instagram, and we may have my man Erwin from Spiderman Mustang joining us, and his link on Instagram is there as well. So I guess for me, I came to this late. I enjoyed what I was reading, and it encouraged me to go back and collect all the way along. I was loving it all the way through issue 25, which I thought was quite a departure. And we'll get into issue 25 at some point, because I know Chaos and Comics will want us to say something about it. But it felt like an ending point for me. And then later, when this omnibus came around, I was like ready to buy it. I had the money set aside. And I knew that when I read it, I would be able to actually see how it all ended and see the whole thing. John Big Daddy Ross, this is a great read. And that's definitely how I would sum it up if I was going to put this whole if anybody wants to stop at 10 minutes in and ask the Chris Lopez question, should I read this? It's a great read. That's a perfect summary right there. It's a great read. But we'll do a little more of the minutia and the details. But Stu, I want to kick it off with art, because art for me drew me to this book. Somebody like Joe Bennett, who does the lion's share of the heavy lifting here. He really carried the load. And then, of course, as you mentioned at the top, Alex Ross doing, I love his Marvels. I love so much of his work. This is the greatest of stuff he's ever going to do in his life. The 50, and he did all 50 of the cover A's for this run. I can't imagine him ever topping this.
No, I can think of so many memorable ones off the top of my head that he did in this run. And yeah, I think Joe Bennett killed it. Everything from his Hulk design, just the look of Hulk's face to his eyes, the menacing look. I love that like there's a 6-panel grid, I think, in the first issue where that dude who's robbing the diner or whatever shoots him, and just talking about, I'm a good guy, and he's like, yeah, sure you are. And also Joe Bennett knows how to approach a splash page, man. There are so many epic, amazing splash pages throughout this run that I really appreciate. I feel like that's something that's sometimes lost in modern comics is, and I think like artists like Daniel and Warren Johnson do so well, is that appreciation and that usage of a splash page here. This is the one I was talking about.
Yeah,
but just
I
just love the look of it.
Yeah, he put his signature on the look of Hulk. That's a great point. I think he adds this, even when Hulk doesn't look like Hulk, and he becomes this like elongated, grotesque kind of creature.
The body horror is next level.
There's some really interesting stuff. And yeah, I guess that brings us to I don't want to skip over the art too much, but I would say what hooked me early on were those covers by Alex Ross, because it was like, okay, this sounds really interesting. If nothing else, I'll have a cool Hulk cover. And then I opened it, and then the Joe Bennett art on the inside, it did not mirror Alex Ross, but at the same time, what Ross was doing sort of psychedelic, or no, I guess Ross was doing kind of like classically. On the inside, Joe Bennett was doing this modern horror book, which I think for me is at the core of what works here. And I don't know enough about Hulk, and if anybody in the chat wants to chime in, I believe, as far as I understand, then Dope Comics is, if it's your favorite character, maybe you can help me here, my man. Is, as far as I understand, and obviously there's a lot of Hulk comics out there, this feels like the first real time Hulk and horror have been so closely like linked. Obviously, being Bruce Banner is a horror and a horrible life, and he is really not your typical superhero, and that his is a burden. But the idea that they turn Hulk into this almost werewolf-like character who comes out at night and has control, and it's almost like the moon has control over him in some way, and death holds no sway. Like a zombie, he rises from the dead again and again. There's this dark Hellraiser, like underworld with a devil at the bottom of all of this. So for me, it arose a lot of like Universal monster stuff. It brought back a lot of zombie stuff for me, a lot of Hellraiser stuff. So for me, this felt like a really like peanut butter and chocolate thing, where it was like, how did nobody make this connection before?
For sure, absolutely. And it's just like, just the horror that like Banner's body goes through in the transformation. Just like, I just love those. And it's not just Hulk here. It's the what's it called? The black army general or major, whatever, who gets
Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah, Thunderbolt
Ross. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh god,
that gets
Fortinbras or something like that.
Yeah, and he's got that Venus flytrap type of claw type face, and it kind of completely takes over him. I just like, those scenes are so epic. Yeah, man. When I was all in on this is when they cut him up and he was in those different jars. And then like the I think it was like the hand
snap to break the jars open.
And that's like when you truly get to the horrifying thing, like, man, this thing cannot be stopped.
No.
And I love how the beginning, like, you realize it's a Devil Hulk and it's the Hulk that Banner locked away, but now he's loose, and the way he's talking later is so like cool, calm, and calculated. You're like, man, who am I? Do I trust this guy? Like, do I trust it? And even though he's like he's mean and you know, like a little bit more edgier than like your normal Hulk, it's I just love that dichotomy of like, you know, him versus Banner and like who really is who was locking away who.
And that's the core of this, because even the first issue ends with he says something like, "I'm a good guy, aren't I?" And he's looking in the mirror, and it ends the very last issue, without spoiling it too much, is Bruce saying, you know, "Am I the good guy or the bad guy? Like, you know, you decide. You know, I've shown you all of my faces. I'm laid bare here. You can make that decision about me now."
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of like an Al Ewing written book is like he's such an encyclopedia of Marvel knowledge. Like
Right.
he was able to pull and kind of incorporate all those elements and you know, history lessons of Hulk seamlessly.
Right.
That was really
Right.
like another great part about this entire run.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Chet says that the newest Hulk run is certainly horror driven, and there are definitely comparisons to be made and inspirations to be drawn upon. My question though is, I believe my estimation is correct, that this is the first time that horror on a grand scale has been tied with the Hulk.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that as dark as some runs and arcs might have been before this, they never seem to like dive full head on into the horror genre like this. So that's one of the real unique things about this run. Let's hear more about the greatest Hulk run of our generation. I mean, that's a phenomenal way to look at it. And certainly as a Hulk novice, and I know, Mark, you're more of a Hulk expert, this feels groundbreaking and, you know, character evolving, not necessarily character changing, but evolving, which I think is a big part of what comics, you know, need to be doing.
Yeah.
Hulk should be dark, just like Frankenstein, Jekyll, Hyde, and he's obviously like built on some of the same horror tropes, right? The doctor who you know, does something and can't control the results. There's definitely that element for sure. Classic horror stuff. Hulk reciting poetry before murking a bad guy. Yeah, right. There's definitely some interesting psychological layers. So we're just talking overview at this point. We were talking about artwork, that Joe Bennett look that he does, the way he sort of creates that mood, that sense of horror, you know, from a visual standpoint, and then those amazing Ross covers. But let's dive into like plot now a little bit, because the first story arc is an introduction to this newer version of Hulk, right? This Devil Hulk, who seems to be taking over. It's kind of like, look, Banner has failed enough times. He let a guy with an arrow put him down. Like that's how Hulk died, for those that don't know, in the Avengers storyline before. Now I need to take the reins for this guy. And it harkens back, at least for me as a, you know, guy born in the 70s, to the show, the TV series, you know, with Hulk, you know, walking the earth like Kane in Kung Fu and solving people's problems and then walking on to the next town and sort of letting Hulk do the important job of fixing people's lives, the things that Dr. Banner could never really do. This first plot line that we see in the first issue is, of course, this robbery that goes wrong and this person gets killed, and then Bruce Banner gets we don't know that it's Bruce when he gets shot, but then he goes to the morgue and then doesn't stay dead for very long, and then goes out when the nighttime comes, goes out to get the revenge that Bruce was unable to get in this botched robbery. And ultimately it's a very brutal, violent revenge that we as the audience are kind of left feeling in a Reacher kind of way. Do we agree with the justice being meted out here? And I think that's a good question to ask. I don't think it's something where we should just be like, yeah, Hulk, kill every criminal. This is amazing. It should be like, there's a moral quandary, as much as there's like gratification to know that some awful criminal met their demise. We should be asking that question, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how it's like, you know, the guy at first you're all your tank is full on vengeance, but then the guy's begging for his life. He's talking about how he has a family and a little girl, and like the Hulk's like, you don't say. And it's just like with each frame you feel more and more conflicted about, like, you know, how this is going down.
And even though Hulk doesn't feel conflicted, you can
No,
almost see
man.
like he's like, yeah, that's too
Yeah,
bad.
he gets like his grin gets wider as each panel like progresses.
That horrible grin. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so
Absolutely.
good. It's so good.
We got Mark saying that first arc had Smallville tropes for sure, and definitely reminded me of a lot of DC and Marvel old TV series style. And Marcus, I recommend it, my man. How you doing?
Yeah,
My Something's Killing the
great.
Children homie. Hope you're doing all right. Hulk did that guy's family a favor. So the horror side of this seems to be that lack of control that Bruce is dealing with, where he wakes up, he's not sure what's been going on, he doesn't fully grasp it, but he looks in the mirror and he just sees the devil staring back at him, and the lack of control drives most of this story. In these early issues, you mentioned body horror. I feel like it's one of the signature tropes of this run, right? You mentioned that phenomenal story arc where the secret government agency hunting him down captures him and then chops him into pieces, stores them in jars separate from one another, because their assumption is, hey, he can't form back into some powerful entity if we've separated him into pieces, and now we can study him, right? And then, like you said, he snaps. He's just there he knew that they would try something like this, so he's just listening in, gathering information, and then snaps his fingers to break the jars open, and then remerges. And the best part about it is he absorbs that science
Yeah, he
into
does.
his
Like
body.
I love the good old absorb kills that we get several times throughout. It's so good, man. It's so great.
So
Those are
for
the best.
the body horror stuff, are there any other scenes that really jump out to you, or what were your thoughts about how
Man,
use
I could
body horror?
go through. There's some stuff with like that I can't remember specifically, but there's another absorb kill. I want to say with like the Red Hulk or some version of it, or something
Well, I
going
mean,
on
you
in
look at
hell.
like Betty and the vulture creature that she's been
Oh
turning
man,
into,
yeah,
right? The harpy, I think is what they call her, right? From
yeah.
the comic era. And just how grotesque kind of she looks, and the way in which she's like at one point like eating him, like she's eating pieces out of him to help him. Very Greek mythology like stuff, right? The harpy,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It's like he's a force of nature. I love it. And like there's really no disassembling him or dissecting him. Like he's always gonna be there. He's always
Yeah.
gonna find a way. Just I don't know, that sense of helplessness, like there's really nothing you can do about it. But
And then you have the absorbing man, the battle with Crusher Creel, and the idea that he's going to drain with his red abilities. He's going to drain the gamma out of Bruce, and he becomes this sort of elongated creature, which he is for then several issues after that.
yeah, it's like everybody who crosses paths with this guy just gets baked up or mushed up in some way that they're not ready for. I think Samson gets a taste of the same medicine.
Oh yeah,
more or less. But yeah, it's great, man. I love how it affects. It's not just your straight up normal Hulk smashing. Like these people just get it's like a whole other level of sci-fi and horror. It's so great.
And Mark raises the fact that there was people that were freaked out in the current run reading issue 6, because there's a sequence when Hulk transforms by coming out of Bruce's mouth and like ripping the flesh off of Bruce to become Hulk. But yeah, Immortal Hulk has some of the best ones as well. And I even made a video kind of comparing the two, just because it was kind of fun to look at how artists demonstrate that. I mean, when I was a kid, it was always just his body growing and his color changing, but the shredding of the, like a snake, the old layer, the shedding off of that, it's really graphic.
Yeah. I love. I don't know. I love how this made that like a trope to be celebrated, and I'm glad to see it in other comics. But yeah, Mark makes a great point. Like everybody's pointing to that issue, but like this issue did, the transformations in here are much crazier.
For sure. I want to talk a little bit about what they just call, what we could call hell or the underworld or the gamma world, right?
Yeah.
This concept that when you die and you've got the gamma radiation signature on your body, your body might lie dormant, but your spirit, your essence goes to this other realm this sort of upside down, if you will. And in that place, there's a one below all dominating all of this, but every classic villain of the Hulk, every friend of the Hulk, every person who has been infected by the gamma radiation in all the years of Hulk comics has either been there or goes there during this run, because they die and they go through this process and eventually they find their way back. And the portal between these things, sorry, you beat me to it, but the portal between these places, our world and this underworld, the place below all, is the green door. What are your thoughts about this place and the way that both Al Ewing as the writer and then Joe Bennett as the artist sort of capture the essence of this place?
Well, first of all, just the green door introduction through Ross with the cover, that famous
that one when he's like, it's like tilted and he's like walking up the hill almost towards this big green door.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's that one, and then I was thinking about the one with the green, like the green glowing gamma skeleton type deal.
Oh, but where you see Bruce's body in like sitting in the chair, kind of.
Yeah, and it mirrored the Hulk kind of attacking and doing the same thing. I thought it was. I love that, the whole concept. I love what I really loved about Hulk and Hal during that time was the emaciated look they gave him.
For sure.
But yeah, it was. I thought it was a great flip to the story. I thought it was a great way to, like you said, to incorporate all these past storylines and characters. But yeah, I that's what I remember most, was like that emaciated look and like how everything was fever dreamish, and
because you have to die to go there, so you're already suffering in some manner, right? And then when you go there, it's like there's all these spirits, all of these things that are haunting.
Was it greeted them with like the empty eye sockets?
Oh my goodness, right? So whether those, I don't know that they fully dive into like the truth of those specters, if they are actually all the people that they represent, or if they are psychologically projections from our gamma irradiated characters and the baggage that they're carrying, which is how I took it. But yeah, Mark, I agree. It felt unpredictable, this place. And I didn't know. We visit it many times during the run. And of course, it all sort of ends there and culminates with a big fight there. I felt like it really created this instability in the book and made it very exciting. Those were my favorite story arcs, were the ones that were either directly related and we were going there, or tangentially connected to trying to get there, trying to solve something evolving out of there. The stuff with the leader in the second arc we'll get into as well. There's a few characters we see without the eyes, and Rick is definitely one. We get Jackie McGee's father. He is there when she goes. She sees him, and he's missing his eyes. It was definitely his. Yeah, I know we see Bruce's dad, but he seems to have his eyes the first time we see him there. And then there's the two original scientists creating and studying gamma that we meet in the final issue, and both of them, and the brothers, one who killed the other, Stearns, who I believe is the leader, if I'm not mistaken.
The last issue, yeah.
So that's all in the very final issue. So there's several characters who are in that space. The leader played the long game on him. He really did. Yeah,
he really did.
And he doesn't show his face until issue 25, the very end of that issue. And then, of course, he's all the way through the final arcs of the book, whether like directly or indirectly manipulating all the characters. I didn't say hello to Shop. What is up, Shop? I don't have any Hulk stuff for you, man, but I got my John Doom locked and loaded. So happy Thursday night to you, my brother. I hope things are going well. And I think I missed Kenneth Bird. I'm sorry, Kenneth. I hope you're having a good Thursday night, my man. It's a fun time to hang out and talk comic books. It's always the best. So for me, like the place below all was almost more than the one below all or the leader. The place below all for me was the villain and the somewhat of the second star of this book. And I always felt like, even when the book was far afield from that place, it was always sort of like looming over everything.
Well said, dude. I think that's a great way to put it, because it was as a set piece and a an area where so much essential action took place. I think it very much was like a character in this book for sure.
Now, as a kid growing up, I liked all kinds of nerd stuff, and I watched the original, Lou Ferrigno show as a kid. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
I didn't. That was a little before my time, but
Sure.
yeah.
What I liked about this book is how much, and obviously fans of the show in the chat can let me know. For me, it felt like they did great. Obviously, in the show, there's a reporter who's chasing the Hulk and always trying to find him. In the show, it's Jack McGee, and they've changed that to be Jackie McGee here in the book, though the female reporter is been retconned, if you will. But I don't know that maybe Jack was always in the comics, or maybe it was something that they put into the comics now, just here in Immortal Hulk. But I liked the inclusion of the reporter character. I liked that it was Bruce on the run, not Bruce on the team. And I liked the use of characters like the scientist, that we see buried in the cave. Some of these characters that came straight from that show, it felt to me like a great, not necessarily love letter to that show, but certainly like an inclusion of the entirety of the history of this character.
Because that was such a big introduction to Hulk for so many people. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad that like he kind of legitimized it by including those characters. That's cool to hear. I didn't pick up on that.
And then all through the run, he's also bringing all the great characters back, right? Thunderbolt Ross, you bring him back, Betty. I think She-Hulk comes in, the Avengers come in. I think it's a great way of building, an entire view of the history of the Hulk, and then also doing something totally new within it. Yeah, Lankowski and and all of the Alpha Flight, now Gamma Flight crew. There's a ton of connection across the history of this character that I thought was really, really badass.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the terrible backstory again? I forgot. Refresh my
traumatic memory. The idea that she saw the Hulk as a kid and that it scarred her.
That's right.
Remember, don't look in his eyes. And Dad.
That was so good, man. Yeah,
I thought it was a really great way to point out why she would be curious to hunt him down. Yeah,
and you see elements of that now in the Philip Kennedy Johnson run with the girl that he's got, like attracted to Hulk because of his.
So the first 25 issues, there are a lot of teams that come into play. Alpha Flight tries to take him down. There's all these soldiers trying to take him down. And then there's an issue and a half, basically, where the Avengers try to take him down. And, of course, in every case, either they kill him and he comes right back, or he is clearly toying with them. And they don't have what it takes. Even Thor is begging for mercy at one point in fear, just groveling. But they end up having, I think, Tony Stark's, got some gamma bomb.
Oh yeah, the giant satellite
to beat him. The only way to shut him down, right? So what you get is this sense of nobody can stop him. So what do you do? Which is a powerful place to begin a story, because that was like issue 8 or something.
Yeah, I don't know. He's always had. I love that. That just like horrific, intimidating aspect
7.
of the Hulk.
That cover with the Avengers is issue 7.
Damn,
it's amazing. Like super early on, they were like, the Avengers can't take him down.
Yeah, that's crazy early on. I didn't remember being that early on. But yeah, I just love that.
Healed with Thor's hand inside of him. Yeah. Yeah, he broke Thor with that one punch. Just put him down.
Yeah, and Thor is a great one to like show that he's really on a next level. Like there's nothing better than a good old Thor beat down. Oh yeah.
I want to spend a little time on issue 25. The first arc is a lot of the setting up of these places, these characters, and we go to these secret bases, and we go to the place below all, and we meet Betty, and we see what's become of her. Then we get this issue 25, which jumps us to a far-flung future where we're really looking at where Hulk might end. Where he might become the planet destroyer who just goes through life smashing and devouring, almost Galactus-like. I see Galactus over your shoulder there. almost Galactus-like, just eating and devouring everything. It's a weird issue. It is a double issue. It feels almost Hickman with like all the like abstract aliens and stuff.
Morrisonian. It feels
Right?
Morrisonian to me. Yeah, definitely.
What are your thoughts on issue 25?
I don't know. It doesn't really work for me. It's kind of out of nowhere, and it's just like the one-off thing. Like the art is great. I thought Jermaine Garcia did a great job with the art, and I can kind of see what it wants to do, but I don't know, with the overall like narrative of and how great this book is. Like when I think about this book, that's not the issue I really gravitate towards, or like what I hold in most esteem about this run. However, I'm not on like the hate it, can't stand it, think it was like the worst thing ever. I always, anytime somebody goes for it artistically, and that certainly did. It had elements with the planet names, with the like the exclamation point over that, like reminded me of like 80s Marvel comics and like that cosmic world. So I can appreciate that. But yeah, anytime anybody goes for it creatively, like I'm not gonna hate on it all the way, unless it's really bad. And I don't think this one was. I think it had elements that worked, but ultimately I don't think it really fit into what everything else was going on. And it like, if you're going to do a standalone issue like that, it's got to connect on more levels to me, and it just didn't. It didn't hit home.
And I will say that was the biggest shock to me. Was I stopped at that issue. I had read that issue, and in my head, I read that issue and I think, "Ooh, this is where Immortal Hulk is going. We're gonna, the end of Immortal Hulk is gonna involve all this stuff." And to find out that it was just kind of like, no, we're not going to go back to that. That's that it introduced, like Mark is saying, it introduced some concept with the leader, but that was it. Erwin, I dropped the link in our group chat on Instagram. So if you just scroll up a little bit, you can click the StreamYard link on your phone or your computer, and it'll bring you right in here, my man. For those who don't know, this is Erwin. He's a Spider-Man Mustang on Instagram, and he's been reading along with us as well.
What did you think of the artwork, John?
I thought the artwork was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been consistent even when Joe Bennett isn't on the book. I felt like it was very consistent. I thought it felt like an annual to me. Oh my goodness!
Hey, okay, Mark. Great minds.
Whoa,
that was freaky.
We're twinning here, my man. It felt like an annual for sure. And I don't know that it needed the double size content style. I think if it had been done as an annual, I guess I'm not in that group chat. I can throw you in if you want, and Mark, but Chaos in Comics is in there, just as a warning.
Fair warning.
So for me, it felt like something that could have been put aside and done in a smaller way as an annual, versus instead of using a full double-sized issue 25 as the way to launch it. And then the only valuable, useful thing that came out of it was, again, that reminder that the leader is out there and we haven't seen him yet. And we know that he's going to be the big bad, going forward.
Yeah, true. I agree. I think you're both right about the annual. It's that type of idea or that type of concept, and it would be better served there. But
I think it threw a lot of readers off, because I know a ton of people that read that issue and were like, if this is where Hulk is going, I'm not going to keep reading Immortal Hulk.
Yeah, that's like 25 is it's a not, I don't want to say milestone, but it's one of those numbered issues that attracts more attention than a 26 or a 24 would. So yeah,
absolutely. No, absolutely. Oh, I think Erwin is ready. Erwin, you were good to go. Let's see. Let's test him out. What is up, man?
Hey, what up, man?
Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for coming through, dude.
Yeah, man. This is my favorite runs. I don't know. I think I said it in our group chat before. So I've been collecting since the 80s. I'm an 80s kid. And X-Men 213 was my first book, at fourth grade. That's my first X-Men book, was 213 cameo of Mr. Sinister.
Great book.
I was on, like a lot of us, we go on and off, right, in books. Like we're jumping back on comic books, or jumping off. So at the time, I was just like, let me look at comic books. Let me see what's on the news, comic book forums and stuff. So they were talking about Immortal Hulk 8. So Immortal Hulk 8 is when his new power is revealed, that he can morph all his parts back together. and do like this regenerative like staging effect, like horror show.
Yeah.
So when I saw like a quick article on that, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna check this out. So I picked up issue 8, and I got hooked. I was back in comics after that. I was just like grabbing titles like crazy, picking up Cosmic Ghost Rider, picking
That's
up
awesome.
a bunch of stuff. But so then since then, then Immortal Hulk is like a sweet spot for me, because that's when it kind of like helped me through like a couple like anxiety issues I had back then in 2018-ish is when I started to go back in comics. So that it's a really good run for me, just because I just dive right back in comic books. Like it was like a girlfriend I always I haven't seen in a long time.
That's great.
And I know you're a big Marvel guy. I mean, obviously a ton of Spider-Man, but like for your knowledge, how did you feel about the inclusion? And we were talking a little bit about the way that like they fuse horror and classic Marvel characters like the Hulk. Like it seemed to be a perfect match that I don't feel like had ever been done before.
Yes, correct. I think the way Ewing did it correctly was like you read it as if it's like you're thinking about a movie, because it'll pop up with a quote from the Bible or a quote from some horror book or some classic novel.
Yeah,
it was, and that quote will like stick with you while you're reading the book, and then the very ending is like a cliffhanger or a twist that quote stays with the whole storyline of that one issue.
For sure.
So I thought it was done so well. Like he really tied everything in that one issue. Like you really felt like glued in. Like it was one of the best books on the rack during that time.
I mean, it was definitely tough to beat for sure. We got a couple of friends joining. I'm sorry, Perry. I was ignoring you. How you doing, Perry?
Perry, what up?
And I love Mark. Mark is just feeling, he's like, not enough shows talking about the Hulk these days for Mark. He needs more Hulk in his life. And I feel you, brother. Let's see here. We got Coffee and Comic. What is going on? I feel like it's been a million years since I caught you live. Well, I'm appreciating that you're here. I don't usually do stuff on Thursdays. So it's this is kind of a fun night when I have an opening. The wife is away. So it's a bachelor night here, and I can do something fun with you guys here on the show. So we're getting through issue 25. We talked a little bit about how the first storylines kind of like we're setting up the horror genre stuff, the body horror stuff, the place below all. And then we get this issue 25, this sort of wacky double-sized jump to the future issue where we see Hulk as the world devourer traveling across the cosmos, ultimately as like Galactus-like character. Right. I know this was a big divisive issue where some people loved it. Stu and I came in the middle somewhere where we were like, this felt like an annual. Same with Mark in the chat. No hate on it. We liked the art. But for me, especially, I know that it was a shock that it was not more important to the next 25 issues. What did you feel, Erwin, when you read that issue? Were you like, did Jonathan Hickman step in for a week?
Yeah. It was a real curveball with that issue 25. Like I gave you a heads up, John. Like it's like, don't think it's gonna tie into anything prior to this issue, man. It's like a total curveball. And
I needed that. I was pinning some excitement on like I'm gonna get Galactic Hulk here, just traveling the cosmos.
Right. So I think if you read it again, I think you appreciate it better. Because when my first read through, I was like, what the hell is this crap? Like, this is weird.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on with this issue? So then I read it again when we were doing our group chat, and I was like, okay, I appreciate this issue better. I can really sit down and really dive in, and it's a good issue. It's a really great issue.
And that's what Mark was saying too. He felt like it was a great way to introduce the leader as the villain for the next big arc by doing this kind of potential jump way out into the future and understand the connection between the two. And I can see some of that on retrospect and maybe on another read through, because it would be the third time reading that issue, but it would be the first time going forward, knowing how the leader plays in, right? Knowing what the value is. Then maybe I can understand what it was trying to accomplish, I guess.
Right.
So the second half of this is really driven by the leader. And I'm curious, kind of, Stu, you can kick us off here with this character, but he is definitely the puppet master for a lot of this second act. And we get to see how Joe Fixit now gets a big spot to shine, right? Joe Fixit seems to run the Hulk a ton in this second arc, which for me is a great throwback to, Hulk eras when I him and Wolverine, him and Patch Wolverine hanging out together and at the casinos and stuff. I like that combination of this maniacal leader who's playing a long con and Joe Fixit who's just like the let's get drunk and punch things guy.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, and I like how it's kind of like the two Hulks kind of like against each other or whatever. I think also we forgot to mention like Bruce's father in Act One.
Yeah.
And, like
Yes.
how his murder and Bruce's, guilt and anger and all that stuff just kind of propels this whole story forward.
Which he was ultimately the stand-in for the leader and the one below all in that first arc. He was the big bad representatively,
Yeah, and like trying to get him down there to siphon his or get his power or whatever. But yeah, I love this, man. I like you said, I have very little to next to no knowledge of the leader coming into reading this story, but I just loved. I knew enough that I knew who Joe Fixit was, and I knew the leader was, and just seeing these two, mirrored, kind of different mirrors of Hulk play against each other was great. I thought it was a great second act, and like you said, man, it's very Shakespearean and how it's first, second, and third act here, and I just love how the story always stayed relevant, interesting, always was playing with a cool aspect of his history and characters from it.
Right.
And this is just another example of that. But like I said, this was probably the most leader heavy Hulk story I've ever read. Just in my personal history with the character. So
for sure. I mean, same for me. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, most of my stuff before that was like Planet Hulk is one of my favorites, World War Hulk and all that stuff. But those are really just kind of Hulk in space with his rage and stuff like that. It's not really.
I mean, I love Hulk as Spartacus. That's such a
absolutely, dude. You can't
Planet Hulk. Planet Hulk. If people haven't read it, if Immortal Hulk is the only Hulk they've read, I highly recommend getting that graphic novel for Planet Hulk. It's literally Spartacus but with Hulk, and it's so good.
It's fantastic.
I know that they tease it in Ragnarok, but you don't get the story there. It is so much better in that book, and that's really the only large form Hulk book I've read besides this one.
No, it becomes like a grassroots like leader of the people, a revolutionary. It's
so good.
It's
falls in love and and then Reed Richards blows it all up like he does everything.
Like he comes he's coming back with a rage and his time on Earth, like just those 4 or 5 issues in World War Hulk is
for sure.
But that's my 2 cents on Joe Fixit and the leader.
Yeah, so Erwin, I forgot to mention that we get some great stuff with Joe Fixit in the first 25 issues, like when they've got the whole compound that's got the lighting that's all designed to keep that ultraviolet light or whatever that keeps the Hulk from being able to come out, but somehow Joe Fixit on the inside is still able to operate Bruce Banner and run him around inside this fort. You get to see the hints of Joe Fixit there, and then I feel like in the second arc or the second half of this series, you really get Joe Fixit driving the car, and I'm entertained by Joe. It reminds me of like 90s comics in some way, like 80s and 90s. I don't know how much Hulk you read in that era, but I read a lot of Wolverine, and he was always with Fixit.
Right. And unfortunately, I wasn't a Hulk fan. It's strange because I was always a Spider-Man, of course, Spider-Man Mustang, X-Men fan, and Batman. Those were kind of like my 3 superheroes I kind of like interchanged a lot. So Norman Brayfogle, a lot of those guys, of course, John Byrne. So then when I got into Hulk as the first book to get back into comics in 2018, I was kind of just like fresh. Like all the only Hulk I knew was a couple of cameos that Arthur Adams run with Wolverine, Ghost Rider, right? Sure. So the Hulk was really not much in my general radar. In fact, even like Fast and Furious movie Part 2, when they had like Hulk vehicle all painted up, I was like, you like Hulk? Dude, really? You don't like Wolverine? You don't like Spider-Man? You don't like Batman? You don't like these guys? You like Hulk? So then, like, Hulk was a really cool guy to me. But then when Immortal Hulk came, like, it really just cleaned my slate. Like, oh my God, this is a badass character. I can really dig deep into this character. So pardon me, all those Hulk fans out there, I'm kind of new, right? I'm not new to the game of comic books, but Hulk, I'm going back and trying to collect some of that stuff. Like I went back to collect the whole Planet Hulk. I mean, I think in 2000s, I did read the World War Hulk. I did read that run.
Sure.
But Planet Hulk, I did not get into. So I have all the issues now too. So I got to go through them and read all of them. So
there's a lot of great ones, and I've read the one of the ones that I remember from the early, like the 80s. I think it was the 80s. Was the Crossroads is a storyline that's very lauded and very popular. If you've never read Hulk books from that era, that's one that I've gone back and read because my man Jeffrey Comic-Con Henson, I'm sorry, Mark, but Jeffrey is the biggest Hulk fan I know, and he was like, every time I was asking him, like, what should I go back and read? Is there like a handful of issues? He was like, read Crossroads. You can find it on, the Marvel app or whatever. Just read the Crossroads storyline. It's a handful of issues. It's not that many, but that was a really great.
So is Jeffrey read your comics? Is that on Instagram? Is that Jeffrey?
Jeffrey just goes by, I think it's Jeffrey Comic-Con Henson.
Okay, gotcha.
On Instagram, and he's got a comic shop he works at up in like Central California. So a lot of his videos lately have been kind of, at the shop and kind of what that work is like for him, because he's living his best life these days.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta look him up. I gotta follow him.
I'll drop you his link on Instagram when we're done.
Nice.
Let's see. We got some comedy going on here in the chat. Mark is saying Donny Cates gave us Hulk traveling on the cosmos.
Man,
we don't need
that was rough.
Yeah, that was rough.
That started off promising, but yikes.
I did not read any of it, but I didn't read his Thor either.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, his Thor in the first 6 issues is good.
It's great. The first 2 arcs, I love the Donald Blake stuff, but then it just like fell apart. Same
it just
deal.
dropped.
I was still so in love with Jason Aaron. I could not let myself walk into a new era of Hulk or of Thor yet.
And everybody talks about Nick Klein these days, but he was killing it back then on those covers, man.
Nick Klein's super talented. Yeah.
Yes, he is. He is.
War of the Hulks is great. The whole era from Red Hulk when it rolled out was great. The McGinnis art on Hulk. There you go. Yeah. And then I know Mark was mentioning the Bruce Jones run is an all-time fave with the Return of the Monster. I had not read any of that.
I got to go read that. Yeah.
So thanks for dropping those, Mark. I appreciate it. And if anybody else has Hulk stories that they love, if Hulk fans are watching this and want to leave comments on the rewind, I appreciate having that stuff because it's like these guys here as well. Hulk was never a character I read a ton of outside of the Avengers. Like I'd read him when he was in the Avengers or when he hung out with Wolverine in Wolverine solo books. But that was about as far as I went with Hulk until this run, obviously.
Right.
So getting into like the sort of the end game of this, like the second half of this story, obviously we've got this leader villain playing a huge part. But what I thought was interesting was the ways in which they sort of turn Bruce inside out, right? The love he has for Betty has clearly been corrupted, right? It's just been absolutely ruined by the experience of being with each other. And even when she's trying to help him, and like I talked about the sort of Harpy like eating the pieces out of his body, like to bring him back and then like regurgitate. It's so graphic.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and tragic and disgusting.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts about Betty, because obviously she is in a lot of ways the most grotesque of all of them. Erwin, any thoughts on Betty?
Yeah, let me say a couple of things with the horror aspect and the gruesome, like graphic stuff going on. I know I don't know his name and his actual real name, but read your comic books, right? That guy with
Daryl.
Daryl's giving me a real shit like, yo, man, what are you talking about? Immortal Hulk is better than the original stuff in the 80s and 90s. And forgive me, I wasn't a Hulk fan, right?
Right.
So when Daryl hit me, I was like, okay, I believe you. But from what I read in Immortal Hulk, that's graphic stuff, man. Right. There's some nasty stuff. Like you're mentioning about when Betty was turning into the Red Harpy, and she was like, that cliffhanger when she was eating his heart out like he was another victim. That was nasty, man. Like,
right.
It was a total twist. You're like, you weren't expecting that
no.
His own girlfriend is eating his heart. He has no limbs. You remember that part?
Yeah.
Joe Bennett drew that. There was no limbs. Like, he was literally, how is Hulk gonna get out of this now? He's just laying there with just his head. That's his only limb left. And then his heart's gone, like being eaten by his girlfriend. That was crazy.
It's disturbing. It's absolutely disturbing. And yet also like as the next issue plays out and you realize she's trying to help him in some way,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
that was the real great twist of that sequence because the previous issue, if I'm not mistaken, ended with the cliffhanger of like, oh, she's killing him, like she's eating him.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
the
Yeah.
next issue was like, no, she's actually trying to save. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Like the personification of like his, like just all the shit, like not only he's put her through, but that he's put like everybody else through. I feel like
Right.
it's all his you know, all his karma come back to haunt him. And like you said, that is it's so poetic on so many levels, or her kind of eating pieces of him too.
And it's not just her. Obviously, we get Rick Jones and what this whole thing has cost Rick. We get
That's what you
Walter Lankowski from start to finish. Whether he's like at the first time we meet him, and he's really this being driven by the dark Sasquatch inside of him, all the way through to the end when he ultimately is the reason they save him from the place below all. I think Walter's got a really great story arc in all of this, and you can see the ways in which the Hulk has both scarred and damaged these people, but also like helped a lot of them finding their potential. I knew the Alpha Flight characters obviously from my X-Men stuff, but this was a real interesting way to see them as well. I don't know, Erwin, did you have any thoughts on the Gamma? There's Gamma Flight as well as a miniseries at the end, but like they're all through this story.
Yeah, right. I wasn't an Alpha Flight fan, so it took me a while to really warm up to the Gamma Flight guys. But then, you know, reading it second time with you guys in the group, I thought that was interesting to really like get a different perspective on that group and how they have their own issues with Hulk, but they're still friends. Some of them are, right?
Yeah.
So seeing their whole connections with Hulk and how some of them just, you know, learn from that friendship. But I think Walter's character, I do agree that his character is very interesting to see the depth and how he was connected at the very end. So I enjoyed.
It's almost like they cure him in some ways.
Yes.
But because you see him go through the same thing Bruce went in the earliest issues. You see Walter get shot and killed and go to the hospital, and Bruce shows up there as like, he's not dead. Like, I'm here because this is going to get bad. You need to get these people out of here. And like, it's nighttime. Don't worry. It's not my time. I can handle this. But then as you see Walter, you know, being pulled into Gamma Flight, you see him like losing his, you know, getting drained of some of the Gamma that's been corrupting him, all the way through to the signature of the Gamma that Reed Richards uses to find the place below all. It was kind of, I don't know, Stu, how you felt about seeing Walter as a character beyond just, you know, the Alpha Flight books I read him in.
No, for sure. I had very little knowledge of Walter before that, but I thought, like you said, his character arc was one of the best, and that was one of the best parts about the book, how the Hulk affected these people, good and bad, mostly, you know, bad, but how that he came to terms with all of that. And I thought the choices that Walter had to make, not only for himself but for the others, was you know, was a great part of this book. You know, one of the best stories I thought, you know, or character arcs that we had, besides, you know, all our main heavy hitters. I loved it. Yeah.
Nice. Mark's asking about the one shots, and there's a bunch of them. There's a Defenders story that, you know, where because they had set up like a mini series, a Defenders mini series that some people told me was really good, but they don't include all of them here. And then there's a tie-in to Absolute Carnage, which is an almost silent issue that I remember buying when I was reading the Immortal Hulk run, and I was reading Absolute Carnage, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. I get my peanut butter and jelly. Let's make this happen. What are your thoughts? And I'll let Erwin start. What are your thoughts on some of the tie-ins? Where, you know, did you like the Absolute Carnage silent issue? Did you like some of the Defenders and Gamma Flight solo stuff?
Yeah, with Absolute Carnage, I thought that was really good. It was done really well. It reminded me of that whole. There's another run that happened during Straczynski's run on Amazing Spider-Man that was is like all it said on the cover was "Enough said," and it was just like Spider-Man and a burglar kind of cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the silent event, the silent book event they did. Yeah.
Yes.
Where there was
yes,
a
at
bunch
same
of books
time.
that were like that, right?
Yep.
Right.
Because they did
Right.
that
So-
was the new X-Men issue, the all
The Psychic
silent
Rescue.
issue where
Yep.
you get Emma and Jean going inside of Xavier and his twin sister's mind.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a killer Daredevil Bendis and Leave issue too, if anybody's.
Oh,
And now
I
I've
didn't
read
know
this
that
issue
one.
and I'm realizing that it was I wasn't reading books at that time, but I've since gone and read that run and I've read now new X-Men and it's like, okay, wow, I'm realizing I didn't read those books at that time, but I've now read all these silent
Right.
issues.
Yeah,
It's
right.
hilarious.
Right. Right. So I think the art was good too.
Yeah.
And I also want to mention that some of the artwork during the whole Immortal Hulk run kind of like felt weird whenever they switch out artists. Like
Yeah.
it just felt out of place sometimes for me. Just that's my point of view.
Sure.
Like I felt like I missed.
Well, it's
Joe
hard
Bennett.
to replace Joe Bennett in any
It's hard.
regard, right?
It's hard,
Absolutely.
man, because his artwork is just killer with all those line work, right?
Yes.
It's so good. Even like a simple panel where Walter was just in the airport. You
Yeah.
look at that one panel, it's like, damn, that's just like a simple, it's not even an action shot. It's just he's standing in an airport. But there's so much stuff going on in that panel. Like, man, this is an amazing artist. So I think with the tie-in with the Absolute Carnage was really done well. The artwork is different.
And I don't want to mess it up too much. I'm double checking. Legion is saying that it was the King in Black one that was the silent one. The Carnage one took place in a nanosecond with a symbiote grabbing the Hulk, and we spent the issue watching his
dope.
personalities discuss if they would allow the symbiote to join. Yeah, sorry, man, I'm conflating the two.
I haven't read that
Yes,
one. That
yes.
sounds cool.
Yes, that was another
Yes.
really interesting one where we get to see inside of the Hulk and kind of what why certain personalities dominate and what they bring to the table. Thanks for fixing that for me. Sorry.
Thanks, Legion.
Yeah.
Right.
Mark's been an invaluable resource tonight.
Yeah, I mean he's the biggest Hulk fan next to Jeffrey that I know, and I love that he's pumped on these books as much as we are. But it also highlighted, the Devil Hulk that's been running the machine and all the different Hulks that we've been sort of talking to all along in this run. Any other one shots? Any other little tie-ins that anybody wants to mention?
The Alpha Flight stuff was okay to me, but I didn't read. That Carnage one sounds interesting. I'm gonna check that out.
The Gamma Flight, I will say, the 5-issue Gamma Flight mini.
The Gamma Flight.
It's ultimately the last 5 issues in the omnibus. You can see why they stuffed it at the end. It's not really necessary. I would have been fine cutting that out completely. It is what it is. But it's fine. It's fine. It fits, for whatever reason. But I don't care for that. Those are my least favorite 5 issues of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't read them, you can skip them. But if you got the omnibus and you want to read them, they certainly don't seem unnecessary.
I got you. That's all you can ask for a tie-in,
right? Yeah, I mean, really. And it was a spin-off, just like the Defenders, the Immortal Defenders thing that they did as well. We're about an hour, so I want to spend a little time on how it all kind of ends, I guess you could say, as we get 2 different Hulks. We get sort of like childlike Hulk, and we get Joe Fixit in the place below all. They've found a way to get down there because they realize the leader's pulling the strings and they need to unplug him completely and face down the one below all, who seems to also be the one above all, and really look at how this power has been guiding their lives up to now. And there's a lot of great psychology going on here, a lot of deep thoughts about the nature of man, and we see a flashback to the early 1900s, and we see the birth of gamma technology and 2 brothers torn apart by internal strife and struggle and murder that leads to the original opening of the Green Door. So all of these kind of things, big ideas. For me, I'm just going to say I thought it was a really strong ending and captured a lot of my favorite stuff from this run in one kind of like concise, double-sized issue. But I also felt like there was just a lot to take in and a lot of big ideas and big twists where I'm like, there's no big bad to punch in this, right? There's no big villain. It's definitely a bigger idea than that kind of stuff. Stu, what were your thoughts on how this all kind of ends?
Oh man, I loved it. I thought, you said it so well. It's got all these big concepts about creation, destruction, but ultimately, like, I just like how it's about forgiveness. You know what I mean? And how he's kind of he finds forgiveness and atonement, and for the things he's done and who he is, and I just thought it was beautiful. Like, there's violence in it, and
sure, and it's a Hulk book.
Yeah, and the leader gets torn apart, but it's also about so much more than that. And I thought it was such a brilliant, unique ending. I don't think you could ask for anything for a book about a green giant who's mindlessly smashing. I thought he put so much heart and poetry and nuance and meaning into this. I thought the way, like we said about Ewing earlier, the way he tied together this whole history was brilliant. So I thought it was, dude, like, you always worry about that last issue or that last arc and how, if they're going to stick it, whether it's a miniseries, but especially going as long as this did. And then I like how it's on a nice even 50. Really,
yeah.
I thought stuck the landing in every manner. So yeah, I thought it a really great ending.
And to what Mark and you were both saying, I think there's also a nice symmetry to the concept that this all starts with a dad and his abuse in his family, and and it ends with two brothers and a woman sort of having a similar family dysfunctional dynamic that kind of birthed this whole thing. So in that way, Erwin, there's some great like family pathos and drama that comes out of this. Did you feel that way?
Right. Well, going back to also just how it was going to stick the landing and the ending of this whole run, I thought it wasn't going to work. Like, I was like, I bet you it's not going to be a good ending. Somehow he's going to screw it up. But then he just killed it. And when I read it, I thought that fans aren't going to get it, right? I thought they were all going to look for some epic battle of, and it was weird that he twisted it, that this whole, I agree with that statement, that it's a deeper meaning behind man and the struggle and forgiveness and family and having all this similar, the past and the future. It's like all correlated, everything kind of connected with the whole gamma, and it was really done well. Like I loved it, and the whole higher being, right, the above all and below all, and it was just it was mind blowing. It was mind blowing. I couldn't believe how he just finished it really, really off, really, really well, really well.
Totally.
And of course, the artwork just matched it. It was just always step by step, like toe to toe with the writing and the artwork. It was just awesome ending.
Yeah. And there's so many little sequences that, like you're saying, they bring up the emotions. And I loved seeing, there's these two different versions of Hulk that sort of dominate the issue. You've got Joe Fixit, who is very, I don't want to say logic minded, but very simple, very straightforward, not emotional. Mm-hmm. And then you've got this sort of childlike Hulk who is incredibly emotional, and he's crying in one minute, and he's screaming in rage another, and then he's the one offering forgiveness to Stearns, the leader, when he's revealed to be this pathetic little thing. He's the one picking him up like a baby and cradling him. He's got all the emotion that Joe doesn't. There was some really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that conversation with McGee too, and like, that was just so great.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can even see how Joe manipulates him when he wants to break down the door, but he doesn't want to break his own knuckles on it, and he convinces the kid to do it. There's lots of really great stuff in those dynamics. Of course, on the other side, we get the leader, and they've got to unplug him, and it leads to the one below all, above all thing, which, take it or leave it. I know when comics get into deities, you're going to please some people and you're going to frustrate other people, because it's always the answer is less interesting than the question, and that's just a guarantee, which is why endings are harder to land than beginnings, because asking those interesting questions, like he does, issue 1 asks a question, and I'm good, all right, and then here we are, issue 50, where he's saying you can decide for yourself. And we might not be pleased with that answer, but the question has led us for 50 issues through some very exciting, thrilling stuff. So
absolutely.
for me, as much as I'm like, okay, the one below all is also the one above all, and it's all one God, and okay, I get it. Like, is a little unsatisfying in the sense that you just want to see him punch the one below all. You want the devil versus Hulk fist fight. But I think wisely, for me at least, Bennett's and Ewing's focus is internal and less on the God, which made for a better, I don't know for you, Erwin, but it made for a better ending for me.
Right. And that's what I was worried, right? Because whenever yes, I agree with the whole, when you're talking about deities, God, the higher being, it gets real tricky in comic books, right?
Sure.
So, Infinity was another weird kind of guy, right? Infinity was a crazy character, created by Stan Lee. So it gets real tricky. So the way it ended, I thought it was okay. I was happy with it. I was fine with it, having it that kind of correlation with the character being the same. And I think, honestly, Bennett's pencils can almost make you believe it. That's just from when I read it, I was like, damn, this is awesome issue. So I think that's why they work so well together. I wish I could see them both in a book again, because they work so good together. So good.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been loving Al Ewing the last few years after Immortal Hulk. He jumped from a great run with Immortal Hulk into drawing and writing my favorite character in comics. Like that, he's doing Storm justice across all these X books. I'm just like, yeah, give me more Al Ewing work. He's really been on fire lately.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to get back into Immortal Thor. I was on the first couple issues of that, but
sure. So Stu, any thoughts on the one above all, below all, and the gods, and kind of, I guess, how it all ends, because we end up with a Bruce Banner in his purple suit, looking like, comfortable, as weird as it sounds, I guess, comfortable in his own skin.
Yes, absolutely. And I like how
setting out on a new era in his life.
Yeah, and I love how, he realized he was a tool of chaos and violence, and he didn't want to keep that cycle going, and he chose to break it. So yeah, I thought that was, like you said, like finding a way to be comfortable in his own skin, comfortable with who he was, and what he had done was amazing. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I feel great about this. Is a really fun discussion around this book and this incredible series. I'll start with last thoughts, and I'll bip around to you guys to follow it up. Amazing covers, an amazing art run for Joe Bennett and several supporting people, and Al Ewing redefining a character in a real unusual way that blends horror so well into the character's story. Erwin, any thoughts for you from this series? Anything you felt like you didn't get to say but you wanted to say about this run?
I think that when you mentioned about covers, if you look at the variant cover for issue 16, that's pretty much the cover that explains the whole run, just like how demonic and how like horrific, like the transformation of Bruce Banner to Hulk. That's the
wraparound transformation one. Yeah,
badass cover. Wraparound it just oh man, it's just so good. I've been saying all about Bennett, but I think I need to buy original artwork of Bennett just because I love the guy. It's just so good. So if you look at issue 16, that's a great like explanation of the run to me. That's just my point of view.
Sure. No, that's great. Totally agree. Stu.
Yeah, I think, it was, like you said, a definitive run for the character. I thought it's everything you could want from a comic book, from the Ross covers to the consistent interior art. There's really not a weak arc or point in the story. You can point to 25, sure, but I mean, even that had its redeeming factors. I thought it was just so strong, and we don't get 50 issue runs that are this strong or this bulletproof really anymore. But what is said about the character, using his history, the figures of his past, ultimately being such a human story about forgiveness, redemption, that so many of us can empathize with and find common threads with. I thought it was brilliant. And, the high art, I feel like what all comic books aspire to be. So, and I'm glad to see it revered and influence these books that we have out now.
Because obviously Philip Kennedy Johnson, as we keep mentioning, his current run, which I believe is on issue 7, I think maybe right now, has really been paying homage or paying some respect to what this run was trying to do and what Donnie veered away from pretty dramatically. With what he was doing.
Absolutely.
Well, huge thank you to these gentlemen for joining, and I got all their links in the description down below, so you can find them on Instagram. You can check out YouTube channels, and you can say hi and say thanks and drop them comments there. Obviously, the guest star of the night was Legion of Comics in the chat. So appreciate you, Mark, coming by. Glad this timed well with your schedule. I know sometimes that stuff's tough for all of us with our lives going on these days. So thank you,
John,
for taking that time.
real quick.
Yeah.
That whole transition to Donny Cates was such a weird transition. So I don't know.
Right?
You guys got stuck through Donny Cates when he jumped on. It was like
I did not.
It was weird. Like
I stayed on it for the first couple of issues, and I thought it had potential, but it just fell off. And shout out to I do want to shout out what's his name, Ryan Stegman, who got stuck. Wasn't it him that? Or was it Otley? No, it was Otley on the art.
On the art.
He got stuck holding the bag and had to finish writing the story basically himself. So shout out to him. He got put between a rock and a hard place and had to make the best of it.
For sure. Mark's like, when's the next Hulk stream? I'm not planning a weekly one, but maybe when I get around to rereading Planet Hulk, then you and I.
I'm down for that one.
I'm down. Yeah, I want to read
sure. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate all of you, and those of you in the chat watching. If you've got a favorite Hulk run, I'd love to hear about it. If there's more out there that I need to be reading, obviously it's got an incredible long history, and I've only read just this tiny little fraction of it. So leave me your favorites, and I'll happily add them to my epic reading log on the Marvel app.
Cool.
Now, if you are interested in what's coming next for these Omni live streams, I definitely want to do something talking about Deadly Class now that I've finally finished those 4 epic hardcovers, and I'm launching back into reading Sandman. I've finished the first omnibus. I'm going to read the second omnibus in that series. I'm looking forward to the show coming back, and I love that the Netflix show so much. So I wanted to kind of get myself juiced up for that as well. So if you're interested in any of that, just keep watching the Instagrams or let me know, and I'll throw you to the wolves in the Omnibus chat group where chaos reigns.
Truly.
So thank you all, and have a great night. I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Don. Later, Stu.